Greetings. Welcome to this course, E-commerce Fundamentals for MSMEs. I am the e-commerce general, otherwise known as Leighton Campbell, and today I will be bringing you through a 10-step blueprint to launching your business online. This course is for individuals who want to start an online business and they're not so sure how to get it done. We will be covering some of the key fundamental principles and factors for consideration when starting up your online business. So let's get into it. This is our schedule for today. Of course, we will be giving a quick overview about e-commerce, what it takes to get set up and running. Then we'll get into a little bit of strategy, cover some systems, and end with digital campaigns. Now, at the end of this course, I will be giving you guys a simple guide to help you to put some structure to your e-commerce approach. But for you to access this guide, you must complete the course. Of course, we're also going to add a little quiz to help to ensure that you know that you have grasped the concepts that have been delivered here in today's training. So let's commit our next hour to digesting the information that is being shared here and see how we can apply it to our personal circumstances later on. All right, let's get into it. So before we get started, what is all of this about? What is e-commerce? That's a very good question because a lot of times people think that e-commerce is only about making payments online. But e-commerce is the buying and selling of goods or services using the internet and the transfer of money and data to execute these transactions. So as you can see, transfer of money, which is payments, is just a part of the ecosystem and things that need to happen to complete an e-commerce transaction. At the end of the day, once you are doing business online, as it says, using the internet, right? You are making payments, you're making your orders, submitting orders, you're making payments, and you're exchanging information with remotely or without the person being in front of you. You're pretty much participating in some type of e-commerce activity. Now, you don't need to be collecting payments online to start doing e-commerce. That's not where the journey starts. The journey starts with setting up your system to be able to at least collect orders, and then you can consider payment. So when you think about persons who sell on Instagram, they are participating in the e-commerce ecosystem. They may not be using all the different tools that are readily available to them, but they have definitely started along that journey. They are posting their products on their pages for persons to view. Persons will have digital communication to them via DMs and maybe WhatsApp to express interest in said product. Communications are then sent to the customer to let them know how to pay. And from there, once payment is made, then goods can be sent to that individual. And that's e-commerce in a nutshell. Of course, credit card payment helps to automate the key internal processes that come with fulfilling orders, but it is not the only thing that makes e-commerce work, right? How does it actually work? Now, typically, a consumer would visit a website, and that website can be visited on a laptop, on a tablet, or on their mobile devices. And we know how persons are glued to their mobile devices. The chances are, most times, persons are going to be on their phones when looking for a product of interest, right? Once they have identified that product and have decided that, hey, I want to acquire this, they will typically place an order, right? Once that order is placed, then they will need to make payment, and that payment can be done using bank transfer, can be done even with cash in some instances, right? But of course, credit card is our preferred method of payment because it enables us to automate the process, right? Then once your payment has been made, it is now time to make the goods available to you. And this is where the product is typically packaged and, either made available for pickup at a desk or is sent to the delivery partner for delivery, right? Once the order has been given to the delivery partner and the delivery partner leaves with that particular order, then the order is considered shipped, right? Once the customer receives the package, and that will pretty much be the end of the cycle. But sometimes persons need support in completing the end-to-end transaction, whether it is a package is delayed, whether it is people need more information before buying. Support can be provided in any area of this particular cycle. It is not necessarily restricted to being at the end, what can be provided from the beginning, in the middle, right through, right? And depending on the type of e-commerce strategy that you execute, your customer support may be heavily involved or just lightly involved in the process. Now, why choose e-commerce? The biggest reason to me is for the purpose of reach. Why reach? Because at the end of the day, e-commerce gives your business legs to sell your products beyond your physical location, right? It allows you to sell products beyond your city, across your country, allows you to enter new markets, new territories, right? So you'll see here a map of a customer base where, the customer is based here in the Caribbean, in Jamaica. Sorry, the office is based here in the Caribbean, in Jamaica, but you'll notice that the customers are all over the world. And in a true e-commerce business, your office can be anywhere. And that is why we have not highlighted the office to be very bright or stand out, because this office will literally sit anywhere in the world when operating an e-commerce business. So some of the reasons to choose e-commerce is, one, cost-effective startup. If you think about building a brick and mortar business, is going to cost you a lot more to get started than it would to start an e-commerce business. Also, if you are trying to expand into new territories, you're going to find that e-commerce helps you to reach more customers at a much more cost-effective rate. And if you were to go into these different countries and set up physical infrastructures, let's look at even the trends that are happening in the US with a number of retail outlets that are closing their stores and moving their customers to order online. So pretty much are now investing their monies in creating storage spaces instead of actually setting up storefronts for persons to walk in and view their products, right? So that's one trend that shows exactly, where the direction is where retail is concerned. Of course, market penetration, as I mentioned earlier, e-commerce allows you to really penetrate a market, no matter where it is. Could be your existing market, or you want to increase market share, or you want to enter new territories and find new customers, right? So reach is definitely one of the most compelling reasons to try e-commerce. And, it is one of the best options for startup businesses who are trying to compete with persons who have been established for a very long time. Now, let's talk about some trends that have been happening in the e-commerce space over the last year. This report is coming from Digital Global Report. You can Google it and you will find it. They produce a report every single year on the statistics about different countries around the world and their, mobile usage, internet usage, social media usage, e-commerce trends, stuff like that, right? So this has been a very valuable resource that I use year to year to see what the numbers are looking like, where the enablers are concerned. And that's why I like to call them the key enablers. The key enablers for me with e-commerce in Jamaica is technology and online trends, right? Of course, as well, I think the fulfillment aspect of it plays a very strong role in closing the gap. However, the two strongest areas that enable e-commerce is in the technology development and the online shopping development, right? So let's look at some quick trends. Here in Jamaica, we're seeing where our population count as of February 2025 is at 2.84 million persons, a little bit under 3 million. However, you're seeing where there are at least 3 million mobile phones in circulation, which means that there are more phones than people in the island, more persons having two phones, and so forth. And then, of course, you have internet penetration now being at 83%, which is a significant increase over the last couple of years. I think the government has done a pretty good job of driving the digital transformation needed using the internet penetration as a strategy. And that has been working well in that regard. And then, of course, we see social media usage at approximately 55%. And again, that's another good enabler to let them know, where you can reach persons. Now, what does this mean for businesses? What this means is that if you operate a business, you can reach 100% of your customers using a cellular phone, mobile phone, at least via phone call and via text. Why? Because these are GSM services that come out the box with every single phone, right? What it also means is that you can reach almost 85% of your customer base using internet-based services. So this could include things like websites, WhatsApp, communication, and apps. There are so much more, things that you can use once you open up the Internet of Things. And then, of course, you look at the social media. What this is saying is that we can reach 55% of our prospects, our customers, via social media. These are key enablers, guys, that allow us to physically reach our customer base. All right. So that matter of reach, and that we mentioned earlier as to why persons should choose e-commerce, is being demonstrated here as well in the statistics that show how many people you can truly reach via what medium, right? And of course, you have to look at the online shopping trend. So there's the technology. People have the technology, but what are people doing with the technology, right? Now, these are some key enablers from a financial inclusion perspective and allow e-commerce to be viable here in Jamaica. Let's start with the first one, talking about the amount of persons with financial accounts. What this means is that at least 73% of the country is banked with a financial entity. Of course, majority, if not all, financial institutions now have online bank transfer as a payment method, which means that at least 73% of your customer base can make a payment to you using bank transfer. I think this was heavily popularized during COVID, and I think will only continue to grow as persons do more business online or remotely. And of course, we see here that there is almost 12% credit card ownership and almost 50% debit card ownership. Now, what does this mean? As you know, all of the banks have been changing out their debit cards to be either being Visa or MasterCard. So everybody who has a card from a financial institution, or most cards, not every, but most cards, can be used to make a purchase online, right? It says here that we have 12% credit card penetration, which for me, I believe that most persons who have credit cards would also have a debit card. So I would not say that, would combine these numbers and automatically see where 60% of persons have access, but I would keep it at about 50% as an average of persons who would have access to cards to make payments online. So we're seeing where at least 73% of persons can make payments to using a bank transfer as a payment method, and we're seeing where approximately 50% of persons can make payments to you using a credit card. There are also things like mobile money accounts, mobile wallets that persons will use. The penetration for these are not so high, but these tend to cater oftentimes as well to the unbanked population. So you may find that this allows other persons with different types of accounts to make payments to you. So in Jamaica, we would have seen the popularization of the link over the last couple of years. And I don't know how well they're doing with getting the transactions going, but I've seen a lot of persons out there at least accepting link as a payment method, which says to me that this thing is working, because sellers will not accept payments using something that does not work, right? So those are the ones that I want to zone in on. But that looks at the key trends. What makes e-commerce work? It's technology, it's the financial inclusion, it's also the trends that people have, or the attitudes that people have towards online shopping. Of course, there is the conversation around, where are these people shopping? Are they shopping overseas? Or are they shopping here in Jamaica? That's something to be debated. But at the end of the day, what it says to me is that people in Jamaica are willing to shop online. Now let's talk about the e-commerce model, structuring your business for success. At the end of the day, for me, everything in e-commerce and digital business starts with strategy. If you're not able to properly strategize, then you won't be successful at executing your e-commerce business model. And I believe that this is where a lot of persons begin to fail, because they believe that all they need to do is put up a website, turn on the e-commerce components, and boom, they're in business. They're going to make a lot of money and they're going to be rich now, right? When that is not quite so. You have to start your e-commerce execution with strategy. Think about how you are going to show up, who your customers are going to be, how are you going to connect those customers to your products and so forth before you run full steam ahead and spend all these money to create all these different assets that you don't know how to use or may not be ready for the strategy that is needed for the business. So always start with strategy. All right. So this now gets into our 10-step blueprint, and our number one thing is looking at the e-commerce business model. All right. Now, this is where you choose the type of business model that you're going to execute. Are you going to be a business to consumer business, that's B2C, or are you going to be a B2B business, right? Of course, business to consumer is where you sell directly to, or sell rather to consumers, right? Persons who use the product, buy from you, right? Or buy your product from a retailer or support. And of course, you have B2B, which is where businesses consume the product that you are selling, right? And of course, you are a business, so it's B2B. And then you have C2B, which is where the consumer, which is consumer to business, which is where the consumer is selling the product to businesses. So an example of C2B would be JPS, right? Where if I have solar panels on my house and I am generating more electricity than I need, then I can sell it back to the business, right? Then you have C2C, which is consumer to consumer. And this is where, this is a good example for this would be like eBay, right? Where nobody, everybody can be both a seller and a consumer. So the persons who are selling on the platform are also consuming on the platform, and I guess you could consider this like peer-to-peer types of platforms, where the same person who may be a vendor may also be using the platform as well to actually buy a sale. So everybody's consuming, right? Then of course you have D2C, which is direct to customer, which is where you cut out all middle persons and you supply your product directly to the end customer. So there's no distributor, there's no retailer, just you selling your product directly to your customer. And small manufacturers tend to do this. Like, they manufacture their goods, they go to pop-up shops and they sell their products there directly to the consumer. Another example would be white label and private label. Concept behind these is that somebody has created a product that you want to rebrand and sell as your own. That's what white labeling is. So this is popular in the hair industry, where you get a manufacturer to make a hair bundle and you put on your own branding on it, and voila, all of a sudden you have a hair business where you have your own product being sold. And then another example of private labeling would be where you work with a brand to create a specific version of their product for you with your brand name. So a good example of this would be Jordans, where Nike, the manufacturer or the owner of the brand, well, not the owner, but co-owner of the brand would have worked with Michael Jordan to create a specific version of Nike's specific for his market. And he has his label on it, but all of it comes under the Nike umbrella still. With a white label, there's no umbrella, it's just you, right? That's the main difference between white label and private label, right? So you can choose which one of those work best if you are in the business of reselling products from someone else, right? Then look at wholesaling. Now, in wholesaling is where you sell products in bulk. So, you sell at a reduced rate, and the idea is that you sell your products in bulk. Can be sold to individuals, can be sold to businesses, right? And then you have drop shipping, which is our last business model, which has become popularized and possible because of e-commerce. This is specifically an e-commerce based business model, and how this works is that drop shippers would find a business or a product that they want to sell. They'll identify a supplier who can sell it. They can sometimes form an arrangement with the supplier or not, but they go out there and they market this product. When persons pay them for the product, that is when they actually buy the product from the supplier and ship it directly to the customer. The seller never ever touches the product, right? And it's a good way for persons to get started with no budget for inventory. When you have no budget for inventory, you don't have a choice but to start with a drop shipping model if you're going to be selling products. For selling services is different, but once you're selling products and you don't have the budget to buy all the products, then you can definitely try drop shipping as a method. And there are many companies out there, manufacturers, who leverage drop shipping as a part of their sales model. So they have drop shipping, I would say drop shipping. They have a drop shipping approach towards how they sell. So, for example, if I was to buy a product from Amazon and from the Jamaica and sell it, and I was to ship it directly from Amazon to the customer, then the customer will know that it's coming from Amazon. Then you have a proper drop shipping arrangement. Things like labels are removed from boxes and so forth. Only your branding or your information is placed on it, so that when the customer is ready to buy again, the sale is not cannibalized by the shipper, right? The person comes right back to the drop shipper who sold it to them in the first place. So that's one of the main differences. So you have to determine which one of these business models you want to use. Keep in mind that you can actually leverage more than one at a time. If you are a seller of multiple products or product categories, you may find that you have the ability to employ various business models to different categories of product. But try to keep your business simple. Simplicity is best, especially when starting. Now, the next thing to consider is your digital sales model. In your digital sales model, you have to think about how you're going to sell. How are you going to sell your products to your customers? What do they expect to do when they find you? For a customer who is expecting to order online, you cannot tell them to sign up, it will confuse them. So you yourself, as a seller, need to be very clear about how you are selling your products. Are you asking persons to sign up for something? Are you asking persons to order online like a product, right? Are you asking persons to sign up for a subscription or a membership? A membership could be like a golf club. A subscription would be like a gym service, right? Then of course you have booking online. So we look at hotels, spas, beauty service providers. Then you're looking at requesting quotations, where this could be for any type of purchase that requires an assessment ahead of making a final decision on how much things are going to cost. Then you look at course enrollment, courses are sold in a very unique way these days. And no longer are persons expected to show up in person all the time, every time. But you can now sell your courses online. And this goes for any type of course, training, class, anything that sees you teaching somebody something, anything within the education space can leverage these types of systems because they're built with a full learning management solution that manages all the content and how people access the content and so forth. So understand the digital sales model that you're going to employ when you are looking to set up your business online. What will be your customer relationship strategy? What do I mean by this? What I mean by this is how are you going to engage with your customer throughout the sales and support process? So you have two options that two popular options that I like to discuss with persons, which include self-serve, which is where the customer selects the product for purchase without any help at all. Amazon will be a very good example of that. The supermarket would be a very good example of that. A retail store would be a very good example of that, right? Then you look at personal service, which is where the customer is provided with help to select their product. So for example, a perfume store. Yes, of course, you can walk into the perfume store and pick up any perfume that you desire. But you can also, typically, persons would want to get some help in identifying which scent they want to buy. And, that's all, of course, see them sampling the different scents by smelling them and so forth. And there are many other personal service businesses where, persons have to get that type of support before making a purchase. An example of that would be a house. Nobody that sees a house click and buy. Well, I'm not saying nobody, but most persons require some type of support in buying a property, right? Now, you also have to consider what your support channels are going to be. How are you going to connect with these customers to provide this support that is self-serve or personal service, right? So some digital support channels would include, your email, your WhatsApp, a phone call. It could also be through your website and so forth, right? But be very clear on these things because this directly determines what type of systems you are going to use and what your processes are going to look like where selling your products and service online is concerned. If it is personal service, then we're going to have to add a few things in that process that speaks to how the personal service is delivered to the customer. If it's going to be self-serve, then we have to also think about, and if this goes for all, you have to think about the type of systems that you're going to put in place to facilitate self-serve. If it's personal service, then you need to have at least something that has the person expressing interest to do business with you, and this is where forms come into play. So I think the biggest difference between both of them is that one of them will definitely have to use a full e-commerce system for self-serve, and personal service can start as simple as having a form where somebody can express interest to do business with you. Could also be a text message, it could also be a DM, but a form is makes it more streamlined. Now let's talk about platforms and systems. Setting up